Welcome to our session amid the pandemic, the latest U.S. Latin American export-import trade data. I'm Ivan Barrios, President and CEO of the World Trade Center Miami. The World Trade Center Miami is the organizer of the America's Food and Beverage Show. It is my pleasure. Oh, for those attending, let's start it again. Okay, we're going to start it again. Sorry. Emmy's calling me on the phone. All right, let's go back. Let's go to the start.
That wasn't live?
No, we're not live. We're going to record it. Ready? Welcome to our session amid the pandemic, the latest U.S. Latin American export-import trade data. I'm Ivan Barrios, President and CEO of the World Trade Center Miami. And the World Trade Center Miami is the organizer of the America's Food and Beverage Show. For those attending this session, please type your questions on the chat and we will address them at the end of the presentations. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Ken Roberts. Ken is the founder of WorldCity, a media and event company focused on the impact of globalization and trade on local economies. He is also a contributor to Forbes and a member of the Federal Reserve Advisory Board. Ken, thank you so much for doing this and take it away.
Ivan, thank you for having me. And again, congratulations to you and Alice and Yendi and everybody else, Emmy, for the incredible job you've done in putting together this food and beverage, the 24th annual America's Food and Beverage Show under some pretty unusual circumstances. We've now even got sort of torrential rains as well here in Miami for those of you in the South Florida market. And I guess locusts are about all that we don't have so far. So I guess they're next. But thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here and to spend a few minutes chatting with you guys about sort of the impact of import-export trade this year. Let's start with, we'll go to quickly, there's my background. Ivan just gave you the sort of the rundown. I'll mention a couple of other things that might be helpful. We have a website, ustradenumbers.com. If we have time, we might take a look at some of the pages there to look into the data a little bit more deeply. We've also produced annual trade numbers publications for more than 20 markets around the country, usually focused on airports, seaports, or border crossings. We've done them for Port Everglades, Port Miami, MIA here in South Florida, but we've done them from Seattle to Miami, New York to Los Angeles, all over Texas and a number of other places. We release Trade Matters videos weekly on our YouTube channel, and I do a bunch of talking like this. And in fact, we have one tomorrow on Miami International Airport that you can find information on in the agenda for this event. So let's start with a little background to get you started. When you look at Latin America, and in Latin America, I'm going to include Mexico as part of Latin America, okay? So what I did is I sort of grabbed the top 37 countries that are in Latin America, Caribbean, again, including Mexico, and they account for about 20% of US trade this year, okay? And that's been more or less the case for the better part of the last decade. And again, it's the top 37 nations I use. Now, if we look at those 37 nations, what percentage they account for, Mexico accounts for about 70% of that total. This pie chart you're looking at is just that 20%, if you will, and Mexico accounts for 70% of that. Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Colombia, Peru, Dominican Republic, you can see the list there, right? So again, Mexico is the dominant player in that. If we now, we go to the next slide now, and so again, so if we look at US trade this year, it's down about 13% this year, okay? Most of that decline was in May and June, some in April, a little bit in July, but that has been steadily dropping since May. But it's down about 13%, and if that's annualized through the end of the year, it should be a decline of about $500 billion, which is no small amount, okay? But for the first time since 2010, the percentage of Latin America trade, again, including Mexico, is gonna be below 21%. So as you'll see in a moment, the region has been hit slightly harder than the rest of US trade, okay? So let's take a quick look at a snapshot of some of those countries then, all right? So again, as I mentioned, there were 37 countries. I stopped at the top 37, and 19 of those 37 have seen trade fall this year. So a vast majority, and 7 of the top 10 have seen their trade fall. In fact, I should say the top 19 of that 37 have seen their trade fall. What you're looking at here is 8 countries that I'll focus on just for a brief moment. So the first 3 that you see there, Brazil, Colombia, and Argentina, they're in the top 10, okay, of those Latin American countries trading with the United States. And their trade all fell more than 20%, as you can see there. Now, there's 3 countries that they've seen their trade decline this year more than 40%. That's Paraguay, St. Martin, and Cuba, okay? British Virgin Islands, more than 50%, and then the last flag you see there, Venezuela in the lower right, more than 70%. I can go into a little more detail later if you'd like on what's going on there. Okay, so trade with 8 of the top 10 have fallen. But let's find a little positive news here if we can. So here's 3 countries, relatively small trade partners, obviously, but they've all shown some increase in their trade this year. And again, I can go into what's going on there a little bit later if there's questions in the chat for me. So among the 37 nations that trade with the United States, as part of this exercise, 3 have increased trade, and those are the 3 there. So let's take a closer look at the exports and the imports. We'll start with the top exports for Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, for this part of the exercise, I'm going to exclude Mexico from that because Mexico is such a big player in that, it'll distort the numbers. So this is Latin American and Caribbean without Mexico involved, okay? So exports to Latin American and Caribbean are down 20.62%. US exports, let me see if I can grab that number for you. US exports are down less than that, but exports account for 9.27% of all US exports, okay? And the big three exports to Latin America, Caribbean, refined petroleum products down almost 30%, aircraft non-engine parts down 25%. Part of that's going to be pandemic. Some of that's going to be because of the lack of air travel, right, during that time period. And low value shipments are down 21%. Low value shipments is a particular category of the U.S. Census Bureau data. And by the way, all these statistics I'm giving you are based on U.S. Census Bureau data. And those are down 21%. Those are going to be things like FedEx, DHL, UPS, courier deliveries. They're going to be, they can be e-commerce. They can be anything that is of a lesser value and doesn't fly in large quantities. So now let's look at Mexico. So exports to Mexico are down 22.53%, and overall exports, by the way, are down 14.66%. I'm sorry, these are this is the percentage of exports that Mexico accounts for. So oil is off 34.61% to Mexico. Motor vehicle parts down 36.04%, and those are going to start recovering. You're going to see some recovery there. And computer chips are down 38.13%. So obviously, as we all know, Mexico does a lot of manufacturing for products that are brought back into the United States. And so what you're seeing in those last 2 in particular is that. Oil is a different story. As many of you know, the United States has become a large producer of oil. Oil is one of the fastest growing U.S. exports. So as we have become more reliant on our own oil, we have had to import less of that. But what's going on here is Mexico is actually accepting less of our oil as well because of its economy. We'll go to the next slide here. So now let's look at Latin America and the Caribbean, again, excluding Mexico, for the top imports. Here's what I was talking about. So imports from Latin America and Caribbean down 50.81%. And you may remember that figure on Venezuela's trade being down 70%. A big piece of that is going to be right there in this decline in oil. Coffee off just slightly, down 3.37%. And gold is up 54.34%. So what's going on there? Gold tends to become more valuable and more desirable when there's economic uncertainty. You've seen a great deal of that, particularly in the earlier months of this year. It's had an interesting impact on U.S. trade. Traditionally, the Port of Los Angeles is the United States' top gateway for trade among more than 450 airports, seaports, and border crossings. This year, it's bounced around a lot, but it has included Laredo, Texas. It's included O'Hare, Chicago, and that's largely a lot of PPE flowing into O'Hare. But it's also included JFK in New York, and that was gold coming into the United States from Switzerland. But a lot of gold moves through South Florida on the import side, and you're seeing that there. So up 54.34%. So, yep. So now let's look at imports from Mexico. Motor vehicles, these are the top imports, by the way. Motor vehicles down 33.28%, a big decline there. Again, I anticipate you'll see some recovery there in the coming months. Computers off slightly. You've seen some real strength in this particular sector because as so many of us have been forced to work from home or gone to work from home during the pandemic, it's led to a surge in some of those shipments. Some of them coming from China, obviously, but some also from Mexico. Mexico also does a number of computer monitors and so forth and TVs. and motor vehicle parts down 21.07%. So what you've seen both on the import and export side with Mexico is the impact on the automotive sector. So imports from Latin America and the Caribbean are down 15.64%, and imports count for 13.69% of all U.S. imports. We'll go to the next slide. So let's take a quick look at some of the airports, seaports, and border crossings. And we're going to look at both value and tonnage. And we'll look at value and tonnage by airports and by seaports. And on the border crossings, we'll look just at the value, because the sophistication of the data on tonnage is not great at border crossings. But looking at just airports now, on exports and imports by value. Number one for exports is Miami International Airport, followed by Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport. And then number three is Orlando International Airport. And that may surprise a number of you, but Orlando International Airport has been increasing in the volume of its trade that it's been doing. On the import side, it's MIA again, JFK in New York, and then New Orleans is number three. MIA tends to dominate both of these sides of the equation, by the way. I don't have those statistics for you right now, but I can get them for you. So let's now look at the top airports by tonnage. Here again, you see MIA in the number one slot, both on the import and export side, but you see a slight difference now on the others. So on the export side, you see New Orleans and JFK numbers 2 and 3, okay? And then on the import side, again, it's MIA, but then it's followed by LAX, Los Angeles International Airport, and JFK. Now let's look at just value. And by the way, I'm just doing Latin American Caribbean without Mexico, because it would skew it if I put Mexico in there. So here's the top 3 seaports by value. And you see on the export side, it's Port of Houston, Port Everglades, and Port of New Orleans. And on the import side, it's going to be Port of Houston, Port Everglades, and Port Miami. And now we'll look at tonnage. Okay, so on the tonnage side, you've got Houston, New Orleans, Corpus Christi for exports, and you got Houston, Port of Gramercy, and Port of Long Beach on the import side. And what you see there, the reason you see some difference here, obviously, is just the kind of things that are imported and exported. So Gramercy shows up there because they do a lot of bulk, a lot of very heavy break bulk and neo bulk kind of stuff, whereas the kind of things that are going to move into South Florida will be a little higher value. And so that'll affect those 2 rankings that you've seen there. So now let's look at the border crossings. We'll look at those quickly. So on the export side, it's going to be Port Laredo, El Paso, both in Texas, just on sort of different sides. And as I mentioned earlier, Port Laredo is, not everyone knows this, but tends to rank number 2 in the nation among more than 450 airports, seaports, and border crossings in rank for the value of its trade behind Port of Los Angeles. This year, I think it's down to about number 4, just because the impact of U.S.-Mexico trade has been significant. El Paso is 2nd in the trade with Mexico, and Otay Mesa is a border crossing near San Diego in California. And on the import side, you see Port Laredo, Otay Mesa, and then a new one. Isleta is actually a bridge that has existed for some time just on the outskirts of El Paso. The bridge that I'm calling El Paso there is actually sort of in downtown El Paso. And within the last couple of months, basically Customs and Border Protection, they made some adjustments in where they're crediting some of that trade. And I think they probably realized that a lot of the trade that they had previously said was going through El Paso was actually going through Isleta. So it now ranks number 3 for imports from Mexico. And so I'm willing to take any questions you have right now. And if there are no questions, what I can certainly hear, it looks like we might have at least one question, but what I can, will you share these slides with attendees? Do we need to request them? That's a question for, on my end, I would say yes, but I believe you will get them from the host of the event. But I'm happy, they have a copy, and I'm happy to have them shared with you if that's, and if not, you can always come to me. We'll go to the next slide, and then I'll go to our website for a minute, because we got a little more time here. This will be my contact information here in the lower right. You can send an email to me at kroberts@worldcityweb.com if you want the presentation itself. And I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to see if I can grab the screen right now and go to our website here quickly. And I'll go into a little more detail since we have a few more minutes. Whoops, I'm in the wrong screen. We don't want that one, do we? Give me one more second to stop that and try that again. Oh, wait, this is the right one. Huh, maybe that was the right. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry, it was the right screen. There we go. Let me just get it so I can see it. So this is our website, ustradenumbers.com. So let's start with some of the ones where the trade was up, because I thought they were kind of interesting. So I know that there may not be a enormous number of people in here from Suriname, but that's one of the ones that I mentioned where their trade was up significantly. Oh, and this is our website. On our website here, the free access is this portion at the top you see here, and that's free access for every country in the world that the United States trades with, for every airport, seaport, and border crossing in the United States, and for more than 1,800 specific export and import commodities. So there's a lot of data there. And then I'm going to go into the area for subscribers here to show you sort of what's going on with Suriname here. And you heard me talking about gold, right? So this is what's going on with Suriname. So I'm going to click back to 2019. As you see, there's these little, you can toggle here between the time period here. So back in 2019, you don't even see gold. There it is. It's over here at 1.4%, 1.16 million for the entire year of 2019. And if we click again to this year, this is through September, it's up to 130 million. It says 77% of all imports from Suriname. So what's going on with French Guiana? That one's a really particularly interesting story, because here it is. Watch this again. We'll go back to 2019. Stays about the same because, as some of you might know, French Guiana is host to. Just want to make sure I was on the right page. Is where a lot of satellites go to launch. As many of you know, we're launching satellites constantly into space to monitor almost everything, including us here on this call today, almost certainly. But 94% of the value of the exports, U.S. exports to French Guiana, are those satellites. And then Guyana, let's see what we can figure out on Guyana here. And let's look at Guyana. So year to date, if you look back last year to what were the imports from Guyana? They were aluminum ores, concentrates, shrimp, some gold, and then look at this year. It's oil. So we're getting oil in from Guyana. Now we can take a quick look at Brazil if you'd like. And again, what these will do is sort of give you a sense of where things are. What do we import and export from Brazil? So this is the percentage. Obviously, you can figure that out. These are the percentages of each of these things. So these are the exports to Brazil, and up here we'll tell you the total. Up here, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Up here we'll tell you how about that? The total year to date. Okay, and you can switch it to tonnage if you want, and you can see what do we bring in by, what do we export there by weight, what do we export by value. You can isolate it to airports if you want. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at this data. And then the imports here, and as you'll see, let me see, where's that little, here's the balance of trade with some of these countries. So we export far more than we import from Brazil. So at about 39% and 61%. The US average is roughly the opposite of that, more or less. Let's see if I've got looks like I've got a question here. Let me see if I can get that question up. Do I not see it for some reason? I'm trying to see the question. Maybe I have to minimize the screen a little bit to see that question. Give me 1 second. I know I got a question here and I'm trying to figure out how to get to it. There it is. Oh, I've already answered this question. Okay, good. And so here's Argentina. Argentina, as you can see here, is doing well on the import side. Compared to, this is the same month a year ago, but compared to last month, not so well, but compared to the same month a year ago, doing well. Its rank among our trade partners is gone down slightly this year. Colombia, there's probably going to be some Cuban Americans in the crowd, and you wonder what's going on with Cuban trade to Cuba. This is U.S. exports to Cuba. As most of you know, very little in imports, mostly exports. So you can see this probably won't change drastically, what's going on there. This is year to date. So from that, you can't 100% tell what's going on, but we have, you can sort of tell here that exports have been affected principally early in the year. Okay. But let's look at the story that's generated here. And we can look at the exports to Cuba. Poultry's down 40%, soybeans down 47%, corn down 47%, phosphates and so forth down 50%. And this is not a category, so I won't spend too much time worrying about that. But you can see it's across the board with U.S. trade with Cuba. Here's the Venezuela picture, and if you want to see how data visualization works when it's at its best. So here's our traditional, what you can see is, look what's happened in just 1 year's time. So as of last year, 60% of U.S. trade with Venezuela was an import, 40% was an export. Now look, 86% exports, so a total turnaround. So what is that turnaround all about? Well, let's look at what was going on last year. 71% of the value of all imports from Venezuela was oil. If we fast forward to this year, now you have to try to find oil. It's gone down so much, it's here 12%. So it's just been a significant, a real abrupt change. And as you can see, oil, if you do it just for the current month of September, I'm trying to see if I can find oil in there. Wow. Yeah, I don't even see it. So it's a green color, right? It's a greenish color. Let's see where it goes. It's one of these green ones here somewhere. Maybe there? No. So as you can see, oil just basically vanished for the month of September. And you can see it in sort of this here, but if you go down to the story, and U.S. imports of oil from Venezuela fell 92%. So a significant drop in that trade. Okay, and I showed you those three. So if there's no more questions, I'll be happy to take any questions anybody might have. But if there's no further questions, I will turn it back over to Yendi and let her take it from here.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was a great presentation, very informative. As always, we're always grateful to have you here at the World Trade Center Miami. Again, this conference session will be available on the platform within 24 to 36 hours after we upload the recorded version of the session. So until further ado, thank you so much, Ken, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Bye, Virginia.